Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay. In this session what we are going to do is discuss a small case study, which is the two-span bridge problem. What we want to do is to be able to apply some of the theory we have learnt and see what it results in, especially with respect to obviously network planning. I want to be able to kind of explain how estimation of duration is done for these activities using the bridge as an example. We will also establish predecessor relationship, and basically we will really get into the details of the two-span bridge problem. Now like you can see at the bottom of the slide, we will get into a lot of practical details, but this is only indicative. It is only for classroom discussion, and this by no means is a comprehensive procedure for bridge scheduling. There is a lot more detail one has to get into. Now you recall this? Okay, so this was something we had discussed in lecture 3, okay, about the various elements of the bridge, and we had used it to identify activities, right. So let us actually look at this once more so that you familiarize yourself with the activities. These are the activities we had identified. We had said there is activity 1. So first when we look at the bridge, okay, it is a two-span bridge, so there is span 1, span 2. Okay, you have 2 abutments, a center pier, you have piles. Okay, so these are indication of piles. You have a pile cap. Okay, each of the pile groups have a pile cap, and then you have the girders across, you have a slab deck, the road over it, the abutment has earthwork here, and then the road leading up to the decks and leading away up to the decks on the east and the west side. So these were the components of the bridge, and then we decided that we would break it down into the following activities. So we will get into a little, this is what we will get into details of today. One is I would to the best of what we can do in the classroom show you what these activities look like, and the real objective is to estimate the duration of these activities. Okay, and towards the end of the lecture we will see what is the sequence in which these activities can be done for the bridge to be constructed. So that will give us enough information to do network analysis. So you can see the first activity we are saying here is order and deliver piles. Then we are talking about casting the beams, driving the piles in the east, okay, the constructing the pile cap, constructing the abutment here, okay, driving the piles in the center, constructing the center pile cap, okay, constructing the center pier, driving the piles in the west, okay, again the pile cap, the abutment, then placing these beams here, placing the second set of beams, okay, and then the deck slab is over the beams, and then finally laying the road over this. So let us get into, so again just I am repeating, our objective is to understand what makes up these activities, that is one, and number 2 is to be able to see how would we estimate duration of these activities. Okay, so let us get into the first activity, order and deliver piles. So what we have assumed, or when we say order and deliver piles, is that a precast pile is available for you from a kind of a fabrication factory to be able to order and deliver. So you can see here, if you have not visited a precast yard, it is something which you should do as a part of an industrial visit. So you will have molds like this into which concrete is poured, and then it is stripped, cured, and you will have piles ready for delivery in this form. Okay, and if you place the orders, these are standard length, standard dimension, and I can base the number of my foundation design based on the piles and number of piles. So if you can't order piles, in your area, you might have to set up a precast yard in your site which does something like this. Okay, and these piles are then driven into the ground. Now other than this precast pile, what are the other kinds of piles? cast in situ, where you actually bore and then you cast this pile. Yeah. Here the advantage here is they come precast, so you can start away your operations right away, and in this case we have chosen to do precast. Now how do I estimate duration? Okay, so this slide is a bit busy, but let us see what we can make out as to coming out to estimating duration for precast pile. The simplest one is, let us say if I have to order the piles, what I have to decide is what is the lead time for delivery. If I am going to place an order on a certain item, I have to know. I can't go to the precast yard and say I want 20 piles and he will deliver it to me by evening. It's very unlikely. He will need a certain amount of time because he will have a backlog of orders and things like that. I'll have to find the lead time and then place my order based on the lead time. What else does time of delivery depend? If I was going to a precasting kind of a factory, what else will it differ? Transportation, location where it is, transportation time, is it interstate? If it's interstate, there will be a lot of other things to take care of. Okay, so a lot of these decide whether you are going to do it on site or off site. Also number of piles. If I have a very large order, it's not single delivery, it's going to take time for them to prefabricate, ship it, there will be many cycles of it. So here we are saying there are 30 piles, okay, because it's a relatively small bridge, and we are saying the pile group here. So you can see a 4 by 3, a 2 by 3 and a 4 by 3. Okay, so that is the that is the number. So if you want to interpret what this 4 by 3 and 2 by 3 is, we are assuming that the piles are in the form of a group, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is for one of the abutments. Okay, for the pier it's this way, and for the other abutment it is similar to this. So this is the this is how we get the numbers. Okay, now I'm not decided on given you information on depth of the pile or the dimension of the pile, because we are assuming all that is fairly standard. We should be getting into the detail in if you were doing a real planning, but right now we are just making an assumption and going for the classroom purpose. Okay, so if I were to do a delivery, I just find, okay, it's going to take me 1 month from when I place the order to get the piles, then I have to place the order 1 month ahead of when I want the piles. Now the other alternative is, which I have shown here, is that I don't want, let us say I decide to cast the piles on site. What is the operations required? So you can see from the earlier thing, see it will have certainly a reinforcement cage, okay, it has formwork. So this is the typical sequence of operation. I have to fabricate the reinforcement cage, I have to, for casting the pile, I have to assemble the formwork, pour the concrete, okay, remove the forms. After 1 day, I can't remove the form immediately, so it has to sit there. I am allowing 1 day for the concrete to set. Okay, I probably need less time, but I am allowing 1 day, and then actual time for removing the form. Okay, and then I might decide I want to use it, cure it for 21 days before I actually use it. I have to allow the concrete to gain strength. Now if I wanted it to gain strength rapidly, I could use steam curing. So it depends. So you can imagine now, from when my first pile goes into the casting, I will be able to use it only after how many days? Let us say I start casting and assume that reinforcement fabricate, okay, let us assume that it is all sequential.
25 or 25.
Yeah, about 25 days, and out of which 21 is just going for curing. There is no activity happening there, just curing. So a lot of times people say, look, I don't want to wait for the 21 days, I am going to steam cure it and start using it early. Okay, so if I have so here you can see multiple fabrication beds, right. If I had only one mold, it will take more time. Okay, so how many molds? So I need 30 piles. How many molds should I invest in? Is another critical driver of my rate of production of piles. Okay, so here you can see, if I have here, if you just take a look here, I have 1 day for reinforcement fabrication, formwork assembly, okay, concrete pouring. So here you have 2.5 days. I remove the form after 1 day. So here 1, 2, 3, 4 days. After 4 days I can reuse the form. Okay, after 4 days I can reuse the formwork. So you have to make a calculation in that form and say that, so in my next pile I would have to put it back on the 4th day and then restart. So if I have multiple sets of forms, what will be the way I go? We are leaving the actual what do you call, so you can see the duration here can be determined based on the rate at which my bridge needs piles. I could just have one form and go with it, but is that likely to be good? No, because piling is the first activity. Okay, so if I want to start my piling work, I better have many piles there, and so that was one reason why just ordering and delivering might be an easier approach, so long as my lead time is there. If something like this, I have to do a casting yard setup, and there's many things to do before we get on. So I've just given you an alternative that we can actually, as an exercise later, come back and determine the number of form sets I need to ensure that my project has minimum delay. Okay, any questions on this? We go to the next activity, which is casting the beams. It's similar. So here you can see a casting bed. Okay, again you have reinforcement, you are going to actually pour concrete, wait for it to set, remove the formwork, okay, and land up with a beam and eye girder, something like this. The eye girder is then transported to the place and lifted in place into the as a part of the bridge structure. Okay, now we come to the same question here. In this case we are saying that beam casting is part of the project, okay, and we are assuming that there is a total of 6 beams required, 3 plus 3, 3 on one span, 3 on the other, okay, and the sequence of beam fabrication is like this. So you have 2 days for the reinforcement, and when you are casting the beam, assembly is 1 day, the concrete pouring is 1 day, form removal after 1 day, the time for removing the form is 1 day. Okay, now curing before usage, beam is flexural, it's it's going to be challenged by whatever loads are coming on it, but typically by the time you lift in place on 14 days it will attain its full strength, and soon enough before that service loads come on it. So generally 14 days is enough. Again, if you really want to take it earlier, you have to use steam curing. Okay, now so if we take this beam duration for casting beams, let's get into a little bit of detail and see if if these numbers here, or can we come up with different numbers here. First of all, when we take casting a beam we need 6 beams cast, okay, and we have, how many days does it take to cast a beam? So we can assume now, if I am going to do, so can reinforcement fabrication be done in parallel? Yes. Which means what do I do? What is the sequence? So you will find that this reinforcement can be tied somewhere else, placed here, and then the formwork can be built around it. So I don't need to do this 2 days in sequence to the casting part of it. Okay, so basically if we get into detail, so assume the reinforcement fabrication is available. It takes me 1, 2, 3, 4 days before a form is ready again. So basically assume that my reinforcement yard is producing reinforcement and it's available very rapidly. I just need to take it, or as it is there, I need to take it, put it into the form, assemble the form, pour the concrete, wait for 1 day, remove it, and then the form is ready again. So in one day I can produce, in 4 days I can produce one beam. Okay, so if I go with 3 forms, okay, in 4 days I can produce 3 beams. Okay, now again we can ask what is the production rate required. If I have to get 4 sets, then means I have 3 sets, I have to then invest more, have more space, all of that is required. Does it benefit me? It's one of the questions we are going to discuss is, will this, by going in with 3, will it be beneficial towards the end? Now when does the beam get erected? It's quite late in the project. Can I just do with one set of forms, or do I need multiple? What is the disadvantage of one set of forms versus multiple? We'll discuss all of these in a later stage, but I think all of you realize that this is an issue. Okay, so here we go, we'll assume with 3 sets of forms. Okay, and then can you convince yourself, or can you tell me if this is okay, or what have I done here? What is shown below? What is the duration? How do I calculate the duration? What is it? What does 2 plus 14?
14 days. 14 days
For curing. Yeah. What is 2?
Form work assembly and concrete pour.
Yeah. Why am I not taking 4 days plus 14?
No, because form work removal and all is later. Even though while we are doing form work, the concrete is curing.
Exactly. So I have done my formwork assembly, I have poured my concrete, concrete has started curing, started gaining strength from that day. So it's 2, these 2 days, and then it is, I am allowing it to cure for 14 days. Okay, so on this, on basically 16th day from the start, that beam is, that set of beam is ready. What about the second set of beams?
Just after before, because once the formwork is free,
Right.
you place your
Yeah, I've gone and so just the next set of beams are ready 4 days later, and they are also cure for 14 days. So it goes to 20 days. Now, if you recall, when we went, so here I have actually split this into 2. I have, if I'm taking a duration, I have a duration of 16 days for first set of beams. What is the duration for second set of beams?
4 days. I mean, 20. It will be complete by 20 days.
20 days.
Yes. So from when I start, 20 days. Okay. So both set of beams will be available in 20 days. We will come. So here I have shown it as 2 activity. I have not shown it as 2. I am showing 2 components to the tank. We can decide whether this kind of breaking it up will be useful at a later stage or not. Any questions?
So the reinforcement fabrication, so you are fabricating all the reinforcement together, is it?
We are a reinforcement fabrication requires, it will typically be done in a reinforcement yard. I need crew for it. So all we are saying here is that it takes 2 days to fabricate reinforcement, but that is not constraining my, I'm not doing it in sequence to this, I'm doing it in parallel. The reinforcement cage is brought to the bed and then just placed in before the form is placed. So I don't need to wait. I mean, if I have enough crew, I can fabricate reinforcement for all 6 at the same time.
I think that reinforcement fabrication would ideally mean that you fabricate in the yard and then place it in where you're going to pour the concrete.
That's exactly what it means. It means that this reinforcement is not, I'm not fabricating the reinforcement on the bed. I'm fabricating it out, so the bed is free, and then bringing it and placing it in the bed, doing whatever tying is required, and then doing the formwork around it. Okay, how would it change if I was fabricating the reinforcement on the bed?
It will add 2 days.
It will add to it will constrain that resource of the bed till that reinforcement fabrication is also completed. Okay, in piling, did we assume that? Okay, we will have to go back. You can go back and see in piling if that is assumed. So we would have assumed that it was fabricated on the bed. It varies. It depends. If if you take reinforcement, it depends on what kind of lifting you can do, how far you have to move it. Depends on various issues. Yeah, you had a question?
So in the first set 2 plus 14, even if the
bed is not free, bed is free, the reinforcement is going on somewhere else. Still, we need 4 days.
That's right. You're right. You need the days to fabricate the reinforcement. You're right. Absolutely right.
But in the second day,
You don't need it because it is over. Yeah, you're totally right on that. I just didn't put it because if you had a series of what you do, then it becomes the continuous process and not the initial. In the initial part, you really need it. You're right. Okay, good point. Any other questions? Okay.